All right, hello and welcome to Colebrook Public Podcast. Tonight I am joined with the News and Sentinel's editor, Karen Harrigan. Just a quick reminder before we jump into everything. If you have any questions or comments, please save them till the end, but you can put them in the comments on Facebook and we'll adjust those in a Q&A session at the end. So, Karen, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Elise.
Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. I'm not going to have video of myself through this whole thing. I have a presentation to give, but just for the intro. My name is Karen Harrigan, as Elise said, and thank you all for being here. I have owned the News and Sentinel since 2002. I've been there since 1997, and I've been the editor since 2000. Prior to that, I worked for the Coos County Democrat and the Union Leader as a correspondent. As most local people probably know, I grew up in it, and I love the smell of ink. Can't help it. So I took to it pretty easily. I would say I found my calling in it at a fairly young age, 24. And even though I didn't plan it growing up, I planned on doing something completely different. I do enjoy my job, I enjoy seeing people like Elise, who I covered when she was a kid in school, and now she's doing cool stuff like this. That's fun. And it's challenging, especially right now. It's town meeting time, but I do enjoy it. So I can start my presentation anytime.
Yes. So if you saw anything about this, probably above the video, you're seeing that tonight we're talking about fake news, reliable sources, and media literacy. So if you want to share your screen, we'll jump right into that. We will be turning off our videos, so just for everyone watching, we're still here.
Okay. I hope you're seeing this the way I want you to. I explained this to Elise a little bit ago. I am not a Zoom person, and I am not I'm not a PowerPoint person either, obviously. So, but I did put together what I hope will be a decent few slides. So what is media literacy and why is it important? It's just exactly what it sounds like. Being able to evaluate and understand what you read in the newspaper, see on television, hear on the radio, and gather from online sources. And these days, social media sites. Why is it important? Because based on what we learn and see and read, we form opinions and make decisions every day. And that includes news about what's going on in the world around us and locally. So we like to think people are smart enough to identify fact versus fiction, news versus opinion, or even reality versus satire. But the sad fact is that many people are not. And people, I find, generally believe what they want to believe, and they're all too eager to jump on a bandwagon, whatever it is. I actually don't feel comfortable with the term fake news because to me it's kind of nonsensical. News is either news or it's not. News boils down to fact, and something is either a fact or it's not. So you wouldn't use the term fake fact, you'd use the word lie or untruth. So I prefer the term disinformation. You can also call it propaganda, and in some places, some instances, you could call it slander. So I'm already failing at this because I just tried to, oh, this worked so well this afternoon. All right, there we go. So disinformation is getting harder and harder to identify, especially in images, which can be manipulated and altered digitally to pretty much whatever you want. Identifying a fake news piece or identifying a written piece as news or opinion is usually pretty easy because first, a legitimate news piece will have the word opinion, and a legitimate opinion piece will have the word opinion right up in the header or the title to make it clear to the reader. And you can also just read the text. If it contains a lot of editorial comments, declarations of opinion, etc., it's not news. Opinion pieces are also often written in the first person using I or we pronouns, whereas news stories, aside from statements contained in quotes, will always be written in the third person. It's also worth noting that a good reporter sticks to facts, and they cite sources and figures to back them up. And a good opinion columnist explains what facts led to his or her opinion, and they back up that opinion with reason. Otherwise, they're really just kind of bloviating. So as you can see from these two examples, these are two tweets that were posted around social media, and they are both fake. Both of them have been investigated by numerous news media, bona fide news media, and were determined to be fake. So, but they look real. And I certainly saw a couple of these floating around the internet. So posted by people that I kind of hoped knew better, but you know, it's easy, like I said, it's easy to believe what you want to believe. So one of the pieces that Elise sent out in preparation for this podcast was a really excellent opinion piece by Scripps CEO and President Adam Simpson. And this quote is kind of scary, but it's a very good point. And in the same article, Mr. Simpson also cites an MIT study finding that, quote, it takes true stories about 6 times as long to reach 1,500 people as it does for false news stories, or I should say false stories, to reach the same number of people on Twitter, end quote. That is not really very surprising. We live in small towns. We know that a nasty rumor about a person is going to spread exponentially faster than a story about something they did that's nice. And those of us who are in business know that a customer is going to tell far more people about a bad experience than they will about a good one. My take on it is that outrage spreads a lot faster than a warm, fuzzy feeling does, which is unfortunate, but it's human nature. The News Literacy Project is a national nonprofit educational group, and they encourage that before you share something like this that you see, pause. Give yourselves 30 seconds or so to think about it before you share and to verify what you're sharing. So on a lighter note, or even a more disturbing one, depending on how you want to look at this, a great many people also cannot identify satire or parody when they see it. I'm sure we've all seen people post a joke that they think is actual news and they're all fired up about it. So for example, these quote stories from the Babylon Bee, it should be really obvious that they're not real, but I bet a lot of people might look at some of these and say, wow, really? And that last one about calling someone without texting, I'm totally in favor of that being a hate crime. I'm all over that. So the question of how we practice good media literacy is you simply fact check. Just fact check. That's all you got to do. And while the internet, as I said earlier, makes it way too easy to spread disinformation, it also leaves us with no excuse whatsoever for not practicing good media literacy. All the facts and data you could possibly want are available at your fingertips. It's just a question of going and finding them. So these are some fact and bias checking sites for students. And they're listed by the International Society for Technology and Education, which is at ISTE.org. And I'm happy to email it if you want to just drop me a line, or you can screenshot it. At the paper, among these sites here, I tend to use Snopes and Truth or Fiction, probably more than any others. But you might want to poke around and look at these and find 2 or 3 that you favor and that you trust and just bookmark them. And then when you see something really stupid on Facebook and you're not sure if it's true, you can check it out. I have to say, I used to, like with friends of mine, if they posted something and I went to Snopes and found out it wasn't true, I would copy the link and I'd go back and comment on their page that it wasn't true. But I've kind of given up on that because they don't want to hear it. And it's kind of the same reason why I don't argue with people anymore. I just go, wow, good point, and walk away. So if you don't want to bother with these too, you know, just a good old-fashioned Google search a lot of times will lead to what you need to know. So a question posed by Elise in preparation for this is, how do we become a more media literate society? How do we all practice better media literacy? And my answer to that is education. We need to be educating kids about media literacy in school. One of the pieces she sent around came from the Fulcrum at the University of Ottawa, which is an opinion piece, again, by Trevor Oates. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce that name. I'm going to go with that. Who makes the excellent point that the only way to combat disinformation is by educating children in schools. He states that elementary schools should teach media literacy, quote, especially in the context of social media, end quote. He's right. Oh, wow, I just realized there's a typo in educate. Sorry about that. This generation of kids is the first one that's growing up entirely in the internet age. And their first source of information is no longer a newspaper or the evening news, it's their phone. So that's why it's critical to teach them proper media literacy, to practice it. So, and I gotta say, it's not just the younger kids, judging on what I hear from adults, and that's from 20-somethings on up to older professionals. I know media literacy is not and has not been taught in our schools, or they've just forgotten what they learned. Because at the paper, I get questions from professional, college-educated people who don't know the difference between news content and an advertisement, and I find that frightening. And I don't want to insult anyone, I really don't, but sometimes I hear it from educators, and that bothers me even more. I see media literacy as a responsibility of every citizen, because how can you possibly be an informed voter if you don't know how to judge the accuracy of the information you're using to make a decision at the ballot box? You can't. So, speaking of citizenship, I think there's another subject in school that I also question whether it's being taught, and that is civics, that goes hand in hand with media literacy. I feel really fortunate that I had a civics class at White Mountains Regional from Mr. Petriccioni, because it gave me a base of knowledge about how our systems of government work and my rights as a citizen. And I still remember stuff that he taught back then. I remember having to report on an eminent domain case. And I remembered what he taught us back when I was a freshman about eminent domain. It's important stuff. You can't possibly process the news without having that civics understanding. In an ideal world, where I could just wave a magic wand and make what I want to happen, I would say that our junior high and high school students have to have a 2-semester required course, once in junior high and again in high school. The first semester civics and the second in media literacy. I think it's important, and yes, I do think they should have it twice. We don't stop teaching English when they move on from one grade to another. We keep building on it. This obviously is pretty unlikely, but I would really enjoy an opportunity to work with our local schools to provide newspapers and education. It's a program, it's a national program that is a joint effort between newspapers and schools, and it promotes the use of newspapers as an educational resource. And no, I'm not trying to just, have some job security. I really think that it's first of all important for them to read every day and maybe not from a screen, but I just think it's a good way to promote debate in the classroom and to discuss current events. I was really bothered last week. I geeked out completely for a few days over the Mars rover landing, and I have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old in my house, and I have Chris's boys, my step-grandsons, who are 9 and 11. And last week, I came home that day and I asked our kids, hey, did you guys talk about the Mars rover in school today? And they looked at me like I had grown a third eyeball in the middle of my forehead. They didn't know what I was talking about. And I think when I was in school, we would have been watching it on TV. We would have been talking about it. Our science teachers would have been talking about it. Our math teachers would have been talking about it. And I asked the same question of my step-grandsons, and they didn't know anything about it either. I wonder about current events and whether the importance of knowing what's going on in the world around you every day is something that's being talked about in schools. And I don't blame teachers, by the way. It's Common Core. It's a lot of stuff is being kind of set aside because they're worried about the basics, and they have to worry about the basics and some other things. And some of those things that we grew up with being taught in school, they can't do it anymore. So That is all I have for you. And I want to thank Elise again for setting this up, and thank you all for listening. And if anybody has questions, I welcome them. And remember this, real news is in the newspaper.
Thank you, Karen, for sharing that. So you did share some fact-checking websites, and
Yep.
I was just curious, how can people effectively fact check? So going to one, you said you go to two usually when
I generally use Snopes and Truth or Fiction just because they're kind of quick.
Okay.
Snopes is usually one of the first ones to, like if something comes out today, by tomorrow they might have the, whether it's true or false out there. And they're pretty fair about it. They tell you if it's partly true, partly false, like maybe somebody, yes, it's true, but they took it out of context kind of thing. I personally would probably not go to, there's a couple here that are partisan. And I probably wouldn't bother with those myself. I mean, everybody can do what they want to do, of course, but I'm kind of intrigued by this all sides. I have not checked that out myself yet, and I would like to, because I always enjoy seeing, opposing opinions presented, and then I can kind of compare it, myself.
Right. All right. Again, you answered all my questions that I posed to you ahead of time. I just kind of wanted to go over some things that while I was looking into it and see if you had anything to add to. So I'm going to start my video again just so people can see me talking.
I can probably do that too.
So just wanted to reinforce, like, anyone can make something look like a legit news article. And a big thing that I know that I've been running into is if you Google something, the first 3 or 4 are usually ads. Yeah. And if you have the little ad thing next to it, but it's easy to, they have the ad news articles that they look like news, or an opinion piece even, that are like, I tried this out and I don't know how I feel about it, but it's an advertisement for the company. Right. They're getting paid. So I think that's something to definitely look for when you're looking at, especially things online, whether or not it has that ad next to it, because that's definitely biased.
That's a very good point.
And it is such an important time to talk about media literacy, news literacy, because everything is shared quicker by anyone, like Wikipedia. Anyone can write anything. I know that some people are really good about trying to correct everything, but they can't make sure everything is 100% accurate all the time. The satirical sites, I think some of the things you posted, like the examples you showed, I would think they're funny, but it really depends on who your audience is, right?
True.
Like I could share something funny and some of my friends would totally love it, and then someone else might think it's real. So it's a balance you have to. So maybe if you want to share satire, make sure you say it's satire before you share it.
you can't, like I said, you can't guarantee people are going to be able to figure that out. We've had, as you know, we do an April Fool's page almost every year. Yeah. There's been a couple of years when we didn't have it in us. Something tragic happened right before, and we just weren't in the right mood. Jake Martin, by the way, is just a genius at that stuff. That's his true calling. He should just be writing for The Onion or something. But he wrote one a couple of years ago, and it was about the Main Street project, and it was like saying that a sewer line was going to have to be completely relayed because it was like, I can't remember. It was an infinitesimally small size, too small. And the town hall called us and said that we had to run a correction or a, clarification because people believed it. But I don't really put much stock in that, because I remember years back we did one about this obese cougar, and I don't mean an attractive older woman, I mean an actual four-legged cougar who was going around town. Sorry, my husband's home, so the dogs are going insane. Who was going around town, like showing up at the Dunkin' Donuts window and, trying to beg food everywhere. And it had we even put the picture, we had like jelly stains on the cougar's chest. And somebody actually said they didn't think it was very funny at all. And, they were really scared because where is this thing? And that was the one where this guy called and he was furious because he had told people about it. And then then somebody finally clued him in, it was a joke, and he looked stupid.
Oh.
And I was on the other end of the phone like, is that our fault? I just, you got to be polite to people. How do you respond to that politely? It's really hard. But yeah, so people will believe pretty silly things.
Yeah. So yeah, we talked about double checking sources, making sure that the author is reputable. Obviously, on your April Fool's ones, your authors always have silly names.
Yeah, if the byline is Chris P. Bacon or April F. Hool, you can be pretty sure that it's not true.
Right. But definitely I was thinking anonymity on the internet. People will say anything, or they can share their opinions and make it look real. And that definitely gets into the malinformation, the harmful information that is out there. Graphs can be faked. Pictures and videos can be faked nowadays. So anything really that you see that you feel a little off about, I'd say.
Yeah, you have to question it. I mean, unless you see a legitimate news source. And the other thing is, if somebody posts something and it looks like it came from, say, Reuters or, AP, go to the Reuters site and see if it's there. Probably not. It might not be there. If it sounds hinky to you, it's probably not there. And I should say too that in reporting the news, because I think you had asked us about how we practice media literacy at the paper. Mm-hmm. It's for us, it's kind of just doing our job. It's not something that we check everything. There's an old joke in the news business that if you're quoting your mother, double check how to spell her name. So you don't ever assume that you know anything. And I mean, we all pull a boner every now and then. We all make a mistake, but I do things like in an obituary, somebody mentions that this guy fought in World War II in this unit. I will go online and look up that unit and make sure it's right, because families don't know sometimes, unless they've got the paperwork right in front of them, they might bobble it. And I don't want that to happen, because it's too important to be accurate. And if somebody puts a URL in their story, their press release, I usually go to that site and make sure that it works. Mm-hmm. Because, there could be a typo in it, or it could be not quite the right site. I want to make sure it goes where they think they're going to go. And, most of our stuff, it comes from it's coming directly from the source. It's coming from court documents, meeting minutes, public officials that we're interviewing face-to-face or on the phone or by email, or it's coming from a press release. We don't just pull stuff off the internet and reprint it. We're actually going right to the source. So that's just part of the way we do it. So
awesome. Again, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you, Karen, for sharing this information.
Absolutely.
Like I said, this is definitely a topic that I think is very relevant. So pay attention to the library's Facebook page, because I'll probably be sharing stuff. There's a lot of groups nowadays focusing on news literacy, media literacy. So if you have any more questions or about how to get that information or how to check sources or anything like that, Karen, can they reach out to you?
Absolutely, anytime. I'm there Monday through Friday, pretty much 8 to 5. I sneak out early sometimes, but people can contact me anytime. And I should add too that if anybody is interested in, especially a young person is interested in investigating the field of journalism and they want to come job shadow, they want to try it out, they want to just come talk to us, please do, because we need good journalists.
Awesome. And again, at the library, we want people to find truthful information and call us up, get in touch with us, message us on Facebook, email us, and ask us if we can help you find some information, and we'd be more than happy to do that for you. Again, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Karen, so much.
Thank you, Elise.
And have a great night.
You too. Oh, hi there.